I send him against a godless nation to trample them. When the Lord has finished, I will punish the king of Assyria. Does the axe raise itself above those who swing it? It was the beginning of the judgment of Israel through evil people, but God allowed it to wake up his people. And later on, I looked across the page of that I had opened when I prayed that week of 9/11, and I saw these words: the bricks have fallen down, but we will rebuild with cut stone. The sycamore has been cut down, but we will rebuild with a cedar. An old saint of God, a minister in New York City, was praying that week about September 11th, and he got the very same scripture. Is this the beginning of judgment? And this is the beginning of God calling us to something higher. I want to look at the revelation of this scripture and now take it to a whole new thing. The first harbinger, the fallen bricks. The first sign of the beginning of judgment. Ground Zero was filled with twisted steel and glass, but something else. The Associated Press writer Richard Pyle said for 3 months the 16-acre site had the look of post-World War II Berlin, reduced to piles of bricks. Another one wrote tons of twisted metal, bricks, and ashes. Another of glass and bricks. The second harbinger, the call to rebuild, instead of being humbled by it or seeking the Lord, the call to rebuild. Well, soon after 9/11 came the call to rebuild. It was going to be called the Freedom Tower. It was the beginning of the rebuilding of Ground Zero of New York City in America. In fact, these words were posted over the ruins. A new icon will soon rise above Lower Manhattan's skyline called the Freedom Tower. Interesting, in the Septuagint version, the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures, when it translates this verse from Isaiah, it says this. It says, the bricks are fallen down, but we will build for ourselves a tower. Let us build a tower. The third harbinger, they vow to rebuild bigger, better, and stronger than ever. The commentaries specifically use the words. They say they will vow to rebuild bigger and better. Well, the leaders of America, of New York City and New York State, they gathered at Ground Zero, and they made a vow. They said, we will build this great Freedom Tower. It will be bigger and better. We will show the world that we stand taller than ever. In the past few months, this all made headlines, the controversy over the rebuilding of Ground Zero. A man came into it called Donald Trump with his own plan to rebuild. And this is what he said specifically. He said, I want to see the World Trade Center built maybe a story taller. We should have the World Trade Center bigger and better. The fourth harbinger is the cut stone. In Hebrew, the word is gazit, the gazit stone. And again, as I said, it comes from the word cut. It was quarried stone out of the mountain, big rectangular blocks of massive stone. And the thing is, they took the stone, and this stone was to become the symbol of the rebuilding of Israel. We will rebuild upon this. On July 4th, 2004, just last year, an object was lowered by crane onto the site of Ground Zero. It was a stone. The leaders of the city waited for the stone to come down. It was the beginning of the rebuilding of Ground Zero. And they called it the Freedom Stone, the first stone of the tower. The scripture said the bricks are fallen. We will rebuild with gazit, cut, quarried stone, mountain rock. It so happened that the stone that was lowered down was gazit stone. It was the stone quarried out of the mountains of New York. CNN did a story on it, or there were many stories on it. It said they were laying the symbolic ceremony, the laying of a 20-ton granite cornerstone quarried, hewn from the Adirondack Mountains. The governor visited the stone. They made a big, gigantic ceremony about the stone, and they praised it. New York's Mayor Michael Bloomberg said, by laying this magnificent cornerstone, we are sending a message to people around the world. They did as the leaders did of Israel. They said, this stone will forever remain a symbolic cornerstone for the rebuilding of New York and the nation, all based on this stone. The fifth harbinger, the spirit of defiance. The commentaries go over and over again. This is all about a nation in lieu of God's hand with a spirit of defiance, specifically those words, the spirit of defiance. Well, on the day that they laid the cornerstone, as they did that, Governor George Pataki of New York said this. Listen to this. He said, on the day that as the quarried stone was being laid in the ground, he said, today, we, the heirs of that revolutionary spirit of defiance, lay this cornerstone. Lay this cornerstone. The sixth harbinger, the sycamore tree. The sycamore tree, well, as I said, with that we should be pretty safe because they don't grow. The biblical sycamore tree does not grow in New York or in these areas. The Bible, though, records the sycamore tree being struck down a sign of judgment. It even says in Egypt the sycamore tree was struck down as a sign of judgment. On September 11th, a freak event happened in the devastation. A steel beam from the North Tower was hurled from the sky. As the tower fell, it went through the air and struck down an object. It was a tree. The next day, the people returned to ground zero. They found a tree lying on the ground, pierced by the beam of the falling tower. There at ground zero was a sycamore tree, struck down. It was the Western version of the sycamore tree, literally named after the tree in the Bible, after the tree of Isaiah 9. The harbinger of judgment, the sycamore has fallen. And strange, eerily, the people made this big thing of it. They made a display of it. They displayed the tree, not realizing what it was in the Bible. And they put it on display all torn up, its roots exposed. A very strange thing, as if to draw more attention to the sign. And a sculptor was commissioned to take the fallen sycamore tree and make a cast of it. And he poured metal into the cast. He cast it into bronze, the biblical metal of judgment. And even now it's being worked on, a bronze image of the fallen sycamore, the harbinger of judgment. And the plan is to display it on Wall Street. It's significant because Wall Street epitomizes America's financial prosperity, but it began with something called the Buttonwood Agreement. It was a contract they did to start the New York Stock Exchange in the 18th century. Buttonwood is another name for the sycamore tree. They first met under a sycamore tree to start the New York Stock Exchange. And now there will be a symbol of a fallen sycamore tree on Wall Street. On the same ground zero, you had 3 of the 4 harbingers, the fallen bricks, the gazit or quarried stone, and you had this fallen sycamore tree struck down in the first attack. But there was one more. There was the cedar tree. The 7th harbinger, the cedar tree. In the Bible, the word is erez, the erez tree. The sycamores have fallen, but we will replace them with cedars. We will put cedars in their place. Now, the cedar was grown in Lebanon. We all know the cedars of Lebanon, but they do not grow in our parts of the world, so we're safe, it would seem. The Hebrew word for this, though, as I said, was erez. It means literally a strong tree. It was not only of the cedar of Lebanon, it's used of other trees. It means a strong, firm tree, the erez tree. The cedar of Lebanon is classified as a conifer tree. It's woody, it's strong, it's evergreen. It belongs to the Pinnaceae family of trees. It has needle-like leaves. It has cones. It is a pine tree. And it says, so they were saying the sycamore, okay, but we are going to put a tree that cannot be struck down. But the word is erez tree of the Pinnaceae family. Well, 2 years after September 11th, at the end of 2003, a strange sight was seen on ground zero. A crane, a different crane, was lowering a different object. The object was being lowered to a place where there had been a hole in the ground. It was being laid over the place where the fallen sycamore tree had been struck down. And the object that was being lowered down was a tree. It would have been natural to replace a sycamore tree with a sycamore tree, but instead the scripture says we will replace it with an erez tree. The object lowered was an erez tree, a conifer tree, the same as the cedar of Lebanon, an evergreen, the same as the cedar of Lebanon, a pine tree,